Hi, I'm Wright, an author, strategist, and lecturer at Columbia University. Welcome to the virtual edition of LaterCon 2020. Today, we're going to talk about three subjects: strategy, social media, and community building. Specifically, you'll learn 5 secrets to producing content and experiences that are both relevant and resonate with audiences. Welcome to the new world of brand building from 6 feet away, or shall we say, the new normal for now. As the world around us changes and transforms, we must adapt to continue to be relevant. And brands are on this journey with us. They are socially distancing themselves and investing more in content so that they can have meaningful relationships with their own communities. Change is happening in every single industry all around the world simultaneously. But let's consider the United States and one particular area that has had tremendous growth, which is tied to digital and social media, and that's e-commerce. Bank of America conducted research, and what they found is that the past 10 years of growth in e-commerce has been realized in the 10-week period of the beginning of 2020. Now, McKinsey calls that the quickening or the leap. And what we have to take away from that is this sense of urgency to pivot the strategies that we were using in the past and reevaluate whether they're going to work in this oversaturated digital and social reality of today. So, how do we deliver the best content and social experiences when you can't read people's faces? Well, I want to give you some tips and a couple of strategies to help you navigate and really help you feel comfortable gaining the courage to pivot. And when we look for all those winning strategies around us for how we can help communities feel inspired and engaged, we really have to think about the code of those different communities and how they communicate and relate with each other. Let's face it, Instagram and social media can make or break a brand. And arguably, during this COVID-19 time, brands with strong online communities are navigating the new normal better than brands that are still trying to build communities that were physical as they turn them digital. But what are those rules of the new normal? What is that playbook that we should adopt now that we're having a surge in traffic online, in digital, in social, in streaming, and in so many other ways that people are communicating with each other? For 3 years, my team researched 1,500 companies that were considered innovative, disruptive, or fast-growing. Our goal was simple: to determine in a scenario with limited resources for brand building, what should you focus on? We boiled the ocean, thousands of pieces of content, down to 5 core secrets. To help others with the back of the napkin simple framework, we developed a 5-step process. Based on systems-based thinking from Donella Meadows, who is a former MIT researcher and MacArthur Fellow, we were able to take different pieces of content and start to put them into an organized fashion so that every communication and every engagement that you have with your audience can be reduced down to just 5 simple steps. Those steps are lexicon, audio, visuals, experiences, and cultural connections. When we think about lexicon, it's all the words that we read or hear. From audio, all the sounds that we hear. Visuals, all of the stimuli that we see. And when that language and audio and visuals all meld together, they form an infinite array of experiences. That experience can be a video, or that experience can be some other form of communication. And most importantly, for those experiences, we have to anchor them in cultural connections. In anchoring our communication and our content and engagement in cultural connections means meeting the expectations of our audiences. Combined, all 5 of these steps form LeVec, a secret shortcut for turbocharging your content and community. There's one trick though, and it's ensuring that you act with intent. Acting with intent means not just choosing any words or choosing any sounds or choosing just any visuals. Acting with intent means having one goal in mind for each of the 5 steps. For Lexicon triggers, it means trying to get to branded vocabulary so that you have ownable language amongst your community members. For audio cues, sonic signatures for instant recognition. For visual stimuli, conversation sparks to make your content currency and share-worthy, to give it that pass-along value. In terms of experience drivers, we're really trying to form normative behaviors so that individuals in your community have rituals and traditions that they can perform time and time again, that bond them together under a sense of belonging. And lastly, cultural connections, which means you are acting ethically and meeting the expectations for empowering individuals in your community. So let's take some time and explore those 5 areas. And I'm going to share with you one example to help make it clear for how you can repeat this with your communities. Let's start with lexicon triggers. Lexicon, from a foundation standpoint, are all the words that we use. And words equate to about 7% of a communication. In marketing, we might call that copy. On the web, we call it keywords, aka SEO. And we are trying to craft a set of keywords that are meaningful to the individuals who we interact with. So kind of like knocking on the door of a speakeasy, those individuals understand that language and can use it with each other as an identifier that they belong to the community. We call this branded vocabulary. When those keywords start to trigger some form of an emotional connection. And over time, your community of followers, users, consumers, clients, and beyond tap more into the emotion of that branded vocabulary as they use it naturally and as they come across it in your social channels. Branded vocabulary works best when you take generally something that individuals are incredibly familiar with and make it distinguishable through word choice or the way that that information is delivered linguistically. I'll show you one example. Consider the brand In-N-Out, one of my favorite West Coast hangouts and places to stop by. Now, the fast food industry, and particularly the burger industry, is incredibly saturated. And In-N-Out Burger by no means is the biggest on the West Coast or the biggest in any particular city. As they punch above their weight class, they use branded vocabulary through their menu in order to create this sense of belonging within the community. They can then take that language and translate it into social engagements, building it into copy, building it into social post, or what is shown or said on screen. So the goal is to make sure that there's language that your community understands, that they feel ownership of, that they can say to each other, and it very quickly signals what tribe they're a part of. Now, Budweiser is incredible at using language and catapulting it into pop culture zeitgeist. Over 20 years ago, they gave us "What's up?" which became an instant sensation. And more recently, they gave us Dilly Dilly. And when they invest in this type of communication, it starts to differentiate from all the other types of content that exists within a very saturated category. So even if you're not selling a brand, you're likely selling an idea, a lifestyle, or an experience, aspiration maybe. And in that case, there are a lot of competitors that you have, almost 1 billion. And so it's important to make sure that that content is instantly recognizable. Now, as we're talking about content and making it instantly recognizable, we have to acknowledge audio, the second part in this 5-step process. Audio is an inescapable part of life, believe it or not, but most brands, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or a content platform or a content creator, are not identifiable by a single audio tone, voice, or piece of music. Consider that you admire a set of brands. Now, close your eyes and start to consider, what audio do you associate with those brands that you most admire? 80% of brands are not identifiable at all. And during this pandemic, social media usage has increased by a whopping 25%. And the biggest benefactor are streaming platforms and video content. So the next time you turn on a Netflix show or HBO movie, consider how these content companies strategically use the first few seconds to differentiate their content from the billions of other videos that exist. Brands invest billions of dollars to ensure that they are heard. Aside from often licensing popular yet expensive music tracks, brands understand that an investment in sonic signatures can have a huge brand building return on investment. Consider Intel. Raise your hand if you ever held an internship in your hand. Not many people will raise their hand because 99% of consumers have never held an Intel chip. Yet, Intel is one of the highest brands in terms of recall for their audio. Those iconic bong chimes that were released in 1994, the same year that Whitney Houston won Record of the Year for I Will Always Love You, that audio sound is played every 3 seconds somewhere in the world, in a physical location, on television, or online videos through social media. And because of that level of consistency, a product which the majority of people in the world have never held in their hand has one of the highest brand recalls. That is the power of audio. And audio really has 3 functions. You want to think about it in terms of how it's going to create mood, such as all that music that may be in elevators or restaurants playing. The message, or how it spurs some type of message or delivers that type of message, such as if you're in the airport and you hear someone say, "This walkway is ending." And then lastly, behavior, such as a doorbell. It triggers the action that you should take, which is going to get the door. And so there's a number of different purposes behind why we want to integrate audio. And audio just isn't for companies that have millions of dollars to spend on commercials. It is an integral part of every video and a lot of experiences that you have. And when we think about audio, it's more than just the music, it's also voice. And so we've seen these major moves by different companies to really surface different voices that are recognizable by individuals, and not only recognizable, but put someone in a particular mood. And so when you're thinking about video creation, consider voice, but also consider music and consider the tones that are all going to come together to train someone that your content is uniquely your own. Let's talk about the third area of the 5, visuals. Did you know that 20 to 30% of social media posts, depending on the country, contains rich media? Rich media being a meme, an emoji, a graphic, a GIF, or video. On Instagram, visuals rule, and there's power in being able to curate a profile that others envy, others find inspirational, and others find informative. Let's face it though, no one likes to be talked at all the time. People like to talk with other people. People even like to talk with brands. And that means, as a content creator, that you have to think about the pass along value or social currency of your content. Because content these days means a lot more when someone takes it, remixes it, co-creates something else, or simply shares it. And so the goal isn't necessarily that single view, but the goal is to magnify that out. And when we think about becoming a conversational brand and creating content that's currency, it helps us get there. So we want to think about how we can say the same thing as someone else in a different way. Let's consider happiness as one central feeling. You can have colors that are warm and bright, and that awakens the senses to happiness. You can use symbols such as emojis, such as smiley faces, or you can use imagery. And the top 3 types of images that get people's attention are babies, puppies, and the word free. You can also use a video, such as a baby laughing, in order to capture someone's emotions and awaken their senses and differentiate from someone else expressing that same type of thought. Or you can combine Lexicon, audio, and visuals together into some form of an experience, as individuals could do on Snapchat with turning themselves into a baby. That's Amy Poehler, if you haven't guessed it. The goal of strong visuals is to achieve universal resonance with your community, finding the symbols that have the most meaning to your audience. So from a content standpoint, the goal is to create intrigue that is built on familiarity, yet offers a new point of view. When those words, audio, and visuals come together, it forms an experience. Given the 500,000 English language words and an endless stream of new audio and visuals produced by the second, there are an infinite number of experiences someone can have with content. For content creators, community managers, and curators, the goal is to get a community into normative behavior, to build traditions, habits, and rituals into their routine. If you were a television network, that might mean training individuals to tune in at a particular time. But in social and Instagram, that's not the only way that you can get individuals to have rituals with the brand. Consider this example of Spotify. Every single brand is living in a fire hose of data. And so is there data or other information that you can start to give back to your audience members and community in order to create a different type of experience? With Spotify, every year they give back through an Unwrapped campaign of taking the data of what individuals have streamed and sharing that so that they have some sense of connection back to particular audiences, and they can treat that as currency within the community. Last but not least, cultural connections. And by culture, as we wind down with this 5th and important area, it's all about how to create some safety. In the speedway of culture, as we jump on memes and trends and news, there are a number of different landmines. So there's 3 tips that I want to leave you with in terms of how to make sure your community appreciates the content, and how to make sure that if you're creating content for one community, you don't inadvertently offend another. And that requires empathy, asking, are you respecting your audience and other audiences? Are you empowering them so that the community is better off with your content rather than worse off? And lastly, that there's earnestness, that you are talking about the things and committing to take action, or spurring your community and audience to action on the things that they care about, such as the causes and issues that are most relevant. So to wind down, 5 secrets for how you can create content that is gold. Make sure that the lexicon has branded vocabulary, the audio has a sonic signature that's unique and identifiable to you, that the visuals you use can spark conversations and have pass along value as currency, that the experience that gets created when individuals view your content is embedded with normative behaviors, traditions, and rituals that are reinforced as bonding behavior. And lastly, that there are cultural connections so that the ethics of how you're empowering a community all come together. So, as you go and navigate the rest of 2020 and develop those winning formulas for content for 2021 and even beyond, consider these 5 secrets and shortcuts to how you can use your content to turbocharge brand building with your community. Thanks.